first thing I would like to say that we have French interpretation. Philippe, could you please explain in French that we have interpretation channel?
Yeah, with pleasure. Bonjour tout le monde. Ma collègue Sandra disait que l'interprétation vers le français est disponible pour cette rencontre. Vous avez juste à utiliser la fonction interprétation dans le menu au bas de votre Zoom. Je vais mettre les informations dans le chat sous peu.
Thank you, merci, merci. While we are waiting for other people, please introduce yourself. In the chat box, type your name, organization, and where you are joining us from today. And we will wait a couple of minutes more. If you have any problem or you need any assistance with the interpretation channel, please let us know. So in 1 minute more, we will start in the session. Good morning, Chris. Oh, yeah, from UK. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, Maria. Thank you for joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. So I think we can start in 1 minute. Well, thank you for joining us from Madagascar, Ethiopia, Nigeria. So I think that we can start. So again, good evening, well, good morning. I'm based in Costa Rica, so it's 6 a.m. here in the morning. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. We have, first I would like to say that we have an interpretation channel in French. Again, Philippe, could you please explain in French that's how to join, how to use interpretation channel?
Yes, sure. Hi again, everybody. Ma collègue Sandra dit que l'interprétation vers le français est disponible pour cette rencontre. Je vous ai laissé les instructions dans la boîte de chat. Vous avez normalement un onglet interprétation dans votre menu Zoom au bas de l'écran, juste à cliquer dessus et à choisir le canal en français. Merci.
Merci, merci. Please, well, thank you very much for joining us today, and please introduce yourself in the chat box, type your name, organization, where you are joining us from today, and welcome to this introductory course. Is a gender introductory course that is organized by the UNDP FACS community. Under the G7 World Bank-led Food Systems, Land Use and Restoration Impact, Global Impact Program called FOLUR, which is quite familiar for many of you. But for those who don't know, you can find more information in the chat box, and you will be hearing FOLUR word very often. My name is Sandra Andraka. I work for the FACS community. I'm based in Costa Rica, as I was saying, and I'm here today with my colleagues of the FACS community, Alexandra Tala and Philippe Fleury, and also thank you for the interpreters, Claudia and Fernanda, who will be supporting us today. This event is recorded, and as I was mentioned and Philippe was explaining, we will have French interpretation available. Well, today is even is an introductory course of gender. We will have the opportunity to discuss some concepts, and for those who have more experience on gender or gender specialists, I see many of you that you're a gender focal point or you're expert, please stay with us. Even there are some basic concepts, we will love to hear your experience and share your knowledge with other participants. We are going to have the opportunity to deepen your understanding on gender equality and women's empowerment concepts, and build a shared foundation of knowledge on essential tools and strategies for effective gender mainstreaming. And also recognized and champion the critical role of gender equality in driving sustainable food systems, land use, and restoration initiatives. This event is designed for everybody, for project teams, for practitioners, for government officers, for civil society, and for everybody who would like to know a little bit more about how to develop gender responsive actions, or those who are involved in gender related activities. Today, and I see that many people is still joining from different parts of the world, but mostly from Africa. We organized this event in the Africa-friendly time, so I hope it's useful for you. I see that right now, Yukonjay has just joined from Liberia. Thank you for joining us today, and everybody. So we have two experts today. We have Agustela Nini-Pavli. She's a consultant for UN agencies on gender and human rights, supporting legislative reform and mainstreaming gender in development programming. And Patricia Kristjanson, she is the senior specialist with global experience in agriculture systems and inclusive gender and transformative food systems at the World Bank. Well, she's an expert in Africa. Patty, you will be working in Africa and living there for 20 years, I think, right?
Indeed. I miss it. I miss it every day.
And so I'm very honored to be working with Estela and Patty in the last 2-3 years, and I will encourage all of you to take the opportunity today to take advantage of their knowledge and asking them whatever you would like to know and share with them your experience. And please use the chat box as often as you like. We will monitor in the chat box. If you would like to write in French, Philippe will be supporting us and translating the text into French, and then our colleagues will be responding in English, and he will also be supporting and translate it into French. So I'm going to start with the first presentation, and thank you, Alexandra, for sharing the screen. For you to know, the presentations are in English and in French. This one, we're going to share it on the chat box, so you can follow up the French translation. We are going to share only the English one on the screen. And thank you, Philippe, for sharing there. The second presentation Patty is going to do will be both on the screen with French and English. And we will share all the materials after the event, the recording and the presentations and other relevant materials. So next slide, please, Stella. Alexandra, sorry. I would like to start sharing with you that many of you are already members, but there is the FOLUR Gender Equality Community. You can join. This community is part of the FOLUR community, and it's a place where you can find many information. It's a place where we provide support to country projects. We create a network of gender specialists and non-gender specialists. And we encourage collaboration, knowledge sharing, and engagement with different stakeholders. Philippe has shared the link over there, and if you have any problem to join, please let us know. And you will find many relevant resources there, and the recording of other courses. Next slide, please, Alexandra. And in this community, as I was mentioning, you will find the resource guide on gender equality for FOLUR. This guide was developed by Stella with the contribution of other colleagues, and you will find very, very interesting resources that you can use as a reference for your own projects. And we are right now updating this guide. So if you have reports, documents, analysis that you would like to share, we will be incorporating in the next editions. And then this event and the guides and other activities and the FOLUR Gender Equality Community is part of the FOLUR Gender Learning Program. And this is hosted by the FACTS community and the FOLUR community. And the last year and 23 and 24, we will be already delivering the Gender Learning Program 1 with 3 courses and other gender-related events for FOLUR and non-FOLUR stakeholders. Next slide, please, Alexandra. And in this Gender Learning Program, we deliver an introductory course similar to this one. It's already recorded, and you will find in the gender equality community, and 3 thematic courses focus on FOLUR working areas, on integrated landscape management, on sustainable value chains and restoration. And we had the participation of 178 participants for 58 countries. This year, we are delivering the Gender Learning Program 2nd edition, and we are having these regional introductory courses. We already had the Americas one. This is for Africa, and we will have another one in August for Asia. And then we will continue with some tailored regional in-depth courses. So stay tuned. If you're interested in having a specific conversation with us, with Stella, Patty, and other colleagues, responding to your needs, to your interests, we were organizing these regional courses and also gender learning clinics. So yeah, over to you, Stella. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today to be talking about this very interesting topic, gender in agriculture, land use, and restoration. So basically, here we hope that we have many participants from FOLUR program, but there are other colleagues that work on different similar projects. So when we refer to FOLUR, we mean this global program that is being implemented, as Sandra mentioned, in 27 countries and focuses on land use, food systems, and restoration, which are quite broad and cover a lot of areas that everyone could somehow find themselves in. Today, I will start with key gender equality concepts. They are based mainly on the human rights and policy frameworks on gender equality that apply to the context of agriculture and land use. And then some tools on how to make sure that our work and interventions in this area are grounded in these human rights and policy frameworks through the gender mainstreaming tool. I'll try to explain it as practically as possible. And then our colleague Patricia is going to talk about key gender issues and challenges in FOLUR specific country projects. We're going to try to organize this in an interactive way with discussions. We're going to have some exciting polls and Menti questions coming up as well. So that it's not just us talking, but also you bringing your very valuable experience in this area. Next slide, please. So, I mean, this is a basic question, and for some it's very obvious, but not necessarily for everyone. Why gender matters in food and land use? Because it's not something just nice to have, but it's very, very important and strategic because women are critical in the food system and land use. So we cannot have sustainability without women participating and benefiting equally in this context. But unfortunately, the reality is at such that women are very often excluded, both from participation in decision making and from benefiting. And they usually, although most of the time they do the heavy lifting, most of the work they do not actually benefit at the same level that men benefit, unfortunately. And this is the reality all over the world. Even in developing countries, there is this inequality, and not only in agriculture, but in almost all areas of life. Several studies conducted in recent years have shown that involving women fully, it's not only something that we have to do because it is required, but it's also beneficial from an economic point of view. It increases productivity, and it also helps our efforts to environmental sustainability. But it's important to understand why women are excluded. What is the main reason? And we have to go back to gender norms, traditional gender norms. Without understanding how this interplay, we cannot actually address the inequality that exists between women and men. Next slide, please. So gender roles are not biologically determined, but are determined by the society. So basically, what society expects women and men to do, and they are not necessarily always wrong or harmful. If women choose to do a certain job and men choose to do a certain job based on their free will, or to participate or not participate, this is fine. But then the problem becomes when these are imposed on women and men and traditionally reinforced by gender stereotyping, and it becomes a fact that women cannot participate, for example, in high-end positions or high-value sectors, but they have to do the most sort of low-level jobs. This becomes the problem. Or when women are expected to take care of the house, of the children, of the elderly, of persons with disability, at the same time work, and then not being paid sufficiently for their work. This is what becomes problematic, and this lies at the root of gender inequalities. The good thing is that gender roles evolve, and they have evolved, obviously, as we all know, throughout the years. Women have more and more become more empowered and increased their participation in society in all areas across sectors. But it takes time, and it requires a lot of efforts from a lot of actors, from everyone at different levels, as we're going to discuss later on. And this is just something for you to think if you have noticed gender roles shifting in your context, in your community. Please share with us, or just think about it as you work on these issues. Next slide, please. So basically, this is the problem, that inequalities appear when these norms are left as such, and no one does anything about it. And inequality takes different shapes, from women not being able to own land, to be registered as as the owners of the land that they should be, that they work and they basically live with, to unequal access to credit, inputs, technology, lack of participation at any kind of decision levels, wage gaps, which is rampant everywhere. Even in the European Union, for example, there is a considerable wage gap between men and women across sectors, not only in agriculture. And this is gender equality is basically a human right. Basically, men and women have equal rights. This is what human rights law says. And then gender discrimination is a violation of that right when you treat someone differently because of the gender. And there are different forms of gender discrimination that could be direct. For example, the legislation in a country that does not allow women to own land due to gender, or indirect, for example, services offered, extension services offered at times or places that are unsuitable for women, and if they are done purposely to avoid women participating. This, for example, is a form of indirect discrimination. And then we have, you probably have heard, but I'm just trying to explain some of the concepts that are very important for colleagues that have not had necessarily an exposure to this area of work. Multiple forms of discrimination, or what is being called more recently intersectionality, when gender interacts with other grounds of discrimination, such as being a woman with disability, being an indigenous woman, being a woman from an ethnic minority, etc. These groups of women are particularly more disadvantaged than any other women. So we have to think about this as well. When we talk about women, we have to think also about these other layers of disadvantage that lay upon them. Next slide, please. So here we have an interesting Menti question. You saw this, these different forms of inequality, and if you could think of what is the most pressing issue in your community, in your area of work, in your country, that needs to be addressed, because obviously with our interventions we cannot address everything at once, and we need to prioritize. So they are context specific, different, they take shape and form in different ways in different countries. So please, you can follow here, you have the instructions on how to join the Menti. You can scan the code, and you can vote for only one that you think is more critical. Thank you.
Yeah, Stella, we can give them some time to join.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and if they want, they can click. They can click on the thumb up to know if they are joining. I don't know, Philip, how many people have already joined?
Thanks, Sandra. So for now, we have 10 people in the Menti. Answers are starting to come in. So to join, I left the instructions in the chat as well. You can just go on menti.com and then use the code that is written. So that would be 23249783.
So we have 2 votes for unpaid care work, which limits women's time to productive activities, for example, they may do the work, but they don't have time to do the trainings because they have to take care of the house, the kids, the elderly, and this is a major issue, and that work is not being recognized at all. Or they cannot work at all because they have to take care because of lack of childcare services. And this is, as I mentioned, these are problems that are not happening in only one region of the world, but they are common in a lot of countries, in many countries all over the world. But we have selected some that are particularly specific to FOLUR areas of work. Limited participation in decision-making bodies, this is also very important. Unequal access to land, yes, legally and practically, because in many countries, although the law says that women and men have equal rights to land, in reality, there are a lot of complicated procedures for women to actually appear as landowners and to benefit from using that land as collateral or for other purposes, to sell, to decide on how to manage the land. Unequal access to credit and inputs, yeah. Okay. Limited participation in decision-making bodies. It is quite important.
Stella, we have a comment on Marion on the chat box. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, stressing that unequal access to land
Unequal access to land, yes. So it goes to someone who probably didn't have the chance to do the Menti, but different decisions from men and women. Yeah. Women are the cornerstone of any society, yes, but are they recognized as such? This is the question. Yeah. Okay, I think we can move on. Sorry.
And yeah, we continue with the presentation,
Yes.
Stella.
So I cannot see the screen now. I don't know. Is it
No,
shared?
Alexandra is going to share.
Okay, okay. So it seemed that for most of you, it was participation and ownership to land, which are very important, but they are not the only aspects. Because that leads us to what to do, like moving from theory to practice, or what would be our ultimate objective when we work in this area. Is it to ensure equality? Yes, but this is not the main objective. The main objective is to achieve empowerment, because empowerment is about control. Who is empowered can control things and resources. And it's not about just ensuring that women have equal rights, but they have to have the agency, basically the ability to use these rights and resources to shape their own life. Because you may have, as we mentioned, in many countries of the world, the laws are quite advanced in terms of gender equality, but then when it comes to their implementation in practice, there are a lot of gaps, and a lot of women don't even know the existence of this legislation that helps them to improve their lives. So it's important that they have there are other interventions that ensure that women have this famous agency that is the most important aspect to women's empowerment. And it requires a lot of interventions in different areas, starting from like the legal reforms is the first one, but then you have to have education, a strong education system to help women achieve the knowledge necessary to succeed, to build confidence, to increase access and control over resources. And especially it's important that we transform also institutions and social norms. The governance aspect it's an important element of inequality empowerment. If you do not have state institutions that support the legislation, then you cannot actually implement this legislation on gender equality. Yes, next slide, please. So now we're moving to a bit of a more theoretical aspect. I'm trying to be brief, but this is extremely useful because we hear a lot about international human rights law, SDGs, and it's important to understand why are they useful. Are they just proclamation, something written that looks very nice in paper, but then in reality doesn't apply? Actually, it's not the case, because since the adoption of the CEDAW Convention, there has been major changes around the world in terms of improvement of women's rights. And this is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is ratified by almost all countries in the world. So basically, the governments, being party, have the obligation to comply and to implement all these rights that they have themselves recognized through this treaty. And among them, there is a famous Article 14, which focuses specifically on the rights of rural women. It addresses not only issues related to access to land and resources, economic resources related to land, but also other services that are essential to their life and well-being, starting with healthcare and education. Because when we talk about women in FOLUR, we focus mostly on the issues related to their work in the agriculture sector, but we sometimes forget the other aspects that are important, which is access to services, because they all complement each other. And the CEDAW has a committee composed of independent experts who are in charge of monitoring states' compliance with this obligation, with CEDAW in general, with all articles of CEDAW, but they also write interpretation of specific articles to explain in practical terms what this article means. So basically, CEDAW has issued a general recommendation, number 34, on the rights of rural women. And it's a very, very useful and good document, which covers a lot of issues that I have listed here. I'm not something that I should have mentioned at the beginning. I apologize if the slides are a bit heavy on the text. I prefer to have less heavy slides, but since this presentation is being recorded and is going to be uploaded in FACS community website, we have to have some basic information there so that others that couldn't join today could go back and look at it. So, but I'm not mentioning and focusing on in all aspects of the presentation. I'm just trying to bring things that we think are important for this introductory course. So if you want to start, if you start from scratch, basically, to look at gender in agriculture, maybe you can start from this general recommendation committee to look at. And if you want to know more information about how your country is doing in terms of gender equality in this area, you can check your country's concluding observations of the CEDAW. As I mentioned, CEDAW reviews periodically every 4 to 8 years every country's performance. And then they issue some useful recommendations when they highlight first the gaps that exist and what to do about them. And there is always a section on rural women on each country. So you can you can Google for CEDAW concluding observations, latest CEDAW concluding observations of your specific country. And there are useful information. So these are practical tools that make these abstract human rights obligations more practical for everyday use, but they have to be used and they have to be promoted, and this is what we are trying to do here as well. And the famous SDGs that colleagues working with the UN system are maybe more familiar with. They are political commitments that all governments have committed in different areas. The main objective is to reduce poverty and ensure sustainability. And there is a specific goal on gender equality, which interacts with many other goals related to that affect directly rural women. Next slide, please. Now, we are going to more practical aspects on gender mainstreaming and how to basically, which is an approach that makes possible the use of this human rights framework into development programming. So it's tools, they are tools that help us use the rich human rights basis to make the programs, the interventions in agriculture and in many other areas actually benefiting women in practice. This is an approach that have been agreed by ECOSOC, which is a body of the UN, and basically requires that you include a gender perspective at every stage of policies, programs, and projects at different levels, national, regional, community level, being those implemented by the government or international organizations or civil society organizations. And the idea is that this perspective, these gender perspectives help that any kind of project, any kind of support initiative benefits both women and men. Now, the degree of gender mainstreaming varies. There are different terminology that you may have heard. For example, the most common one that we hear are gender safeguards or gender sensitive projects. And then we have gender transformative projects. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think that when we say gender safeguards, we have applied gender safeguards in this program, or this is a gender sensitive program? Do you think that this covers different aspects of gender inequality that we mentioned earlier? Do you think that the program that takes a gender sensitive approach or uses safeguards covers gender inequality, and we are safe if we use gender safeguards in our interventions? So you can answer this question, yes or no, or I don't know. There is a poll that you can use. Okay.
So everybody should be seeing the poll now, Estela.
Yes. So we have no, yes. And think about why yes and why no, and we'd like to hear a little bit more from you. Why no and why yes, if you can, someone can also take the floor and speak. Maybe it's time for that I take a break.
You can raise your hand.
Yeah, you.
Or just open your mic. Or chat in the or type in the chat box.
It's an interesting comment from Julius from Kenya. There is too much legislation in Kenya, but achieving the 2/3 gender rule has been a nightmare for too long. So yeah, we would like to hear more about that, why it is a nightmare. And for whom it's a nightmare. That's also interesting. Okay, so the majority says not, but we have a good 33% who says yes. Can anyone, you can write or you can speak. I'm not asking about colleagues who don't know, so.
I see Dr. Kitilope.
Yes.
From Nigeria. Yes, Dr. Kitilope, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sandra. It's nice meeting Agustela. Patricia, it's good seeing you again. Yeah. Some of the aspects that are not generally covered in gender issues include intersectionality. We often see sometimes that some of these things, they intersect, and we may not be able to separate them entirely. Like we're talking about Black women, or we're even talking about some indigenous communities and the fact that there are women that are affected. So some of those parts are not quite covered in some of the gender safeguard we raise. And of course, the male role and experiences also are sometimes often neglected. We don't factor them in. The way gender norms often affect men also are not covered in some of our intervention. And of course, the economic and social nuances are there. These ones are such as poverty, education, and employment opportunities. Some of them, these things, like I said, also they intersect, and they may be a problem that may not be actually covered by some of the sensitive indicators that we put up. And I think those are the major ones that I want to raise at this point: the intersectionality, the way it affects men, and of course the economic and social nuances sometimes also are not captured by gender safeguard and interventions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you're right. Intersectionality very often or mostly rarely isn't captured by gender safeguards. I mean, sometimes it depends on the situation, but mostly not. So yes, if anyone wants to talk as well, to share their opinion. But it's good to see that the majority agrees that no, they are not sufficient.
I see a couple of comments, Estela,
Yes.
in the chat box from
Gender
Clement,
safeguard.
Sujome, and Hiribol.
Gender is not binary and the spectrum is not often tackled these kinds of programs. Yes, it's one aspect. Gender safeguard is about addressing the gender inequality mainly. Yes, the root causes, that is true. But not necessarily, the gender safeguards not always address also gender inequality. So basically, gender safeguards are basic standards of not doing harm, not doing worse, basically. This has been traditionally used as a concept, and it has to do with risk management and protection of, usually it applies to gender aspects, but also other communities. For example, through an intervention in any kind of area, in this case in FOLUR, for example, not creating a situation when women can become victims of gender-based violence. Or if you nationalize a land, a specific land, you make sure that both women and men are equally, that are head of the families, they are equally compensated, they are not excluded from compensation. So basically it's just some minimal safeguards that any kind of project has to bear in mind to ensure that women are not harmed by a specific project, but it doesn't really fully address inequalities. It doesn't go deeper than that to unravel what are opportunities from this project that we can use to make women better, not make them worse, but better, and to improve the situation. And this is why it has been for years that we're using the term gender mainstreaming to ensure that this goes beyond the safeguards and to ensure truly transformative actions or work that makes life radically better for both men and women. But sometimes it's a confusing term, and sometimes people use interchangeably. But so it's important that safeguards are minimal standards. And when we're talking about gender integration, it's about going beyond that, doing more than that. Yes, next slide, please. So gender mainstreaming can be achieved and done at different levels of work, as I mentioned, at the national, regional, and community levels by any kind of actor working in this field. And here some brief examples to understand to see in practice what we're talking about. For example, at the national level, we picked up the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan of Mexico, where gender was integrated at the beginning, at the planning process, through the development of objectives of the biodiversity strategy, and then in different intervention and action plans that followed the adoption of the national strategy. And this is a document that has been adopted by the government. So this is a government level product, and the government proactively integrated gender right at the beginning, at the planning process of the strategy. And then we have other examples at the regional level. For example, the RED Plus programs, projects that have to do with reduction of emission from deforestation and protection from deforestation. And there have been a lot of sub-regional plans in Asia. And one of the first ones that sort of led the way for other countries was in Vietnam, in a province in Vietnam, which covered different ecosystems. And gender was an important component of that integrated. So here we have the example of gender being integrated in a regional plan that is implemented in collaboration between the regional government and the international organizations. This applies particularly in countries when there is an increase, when there is great regional autonomy of different provinces. So it depends on the composition of the country. And then when we see mostly gender integration or gender mainstreaming happens at the community level in projects that, for example, support farmers cooperatives in Rwanda. It was called Farm to Market Alliance, and thanks to this intervention, around 13,000 women farmers from different cooperatives benefited from literacy, management, and governance training. So these are just some examples. So you see, when we talk about gender mainstreaming, what we mean in practical terms, like where do we see that? Next slide, please. So this is a visual to see what are the tools of gender mainstreaming. What does it mean? How can we do gender mainstreaming? It all starts with a gender analysis. So for each of the examples that we mentioned, there has been a gender analysis conducted, which aims to identify what are the gaps, what are the problems. Now, in any different context, you may have a lot of problems, and of course, one program or one intervention cannot address all of them. But so this is a very good exercise to help us visualize what are the problems and think of what we can do to address some of them, what we have, the resources that we have, the capacity that we have to address some of these problems. And you do this through this gender analysis. Usually gender experts are involved in gender analysis, but not necessarily. Even specialists who have some basic gender information or training can do that, and they can use all these resources that I mentioned, the CEDAW convention, the general recommendations, but then you have at the national level a lot of reports produced by different women rights organizations, by different UN agencies that work in this area that you can use for your work. And then we should never forget the work directly getting the information from communities. If you're drafting, if you're planning a project at the community level, you need to go and speak with women, representatives of women from that community, and ask, what are your problems? You can have surveys, assessments that can be used. So there are different, you can read more on gender analysis, but this is a very important tool. And then the findings have to be integrated in the sort of the whole results framework of the specific project or intervention, starting with the theory of change, outcomes, and indicators. And it's very important that when we plan the budget of an intervention, we always allocate resources or budget for gender activities and capacity building, because without a dedicated budget, everything remains on paper, and it's very difficult to implement later on if you have not budgeted, because during the implementation, there will be a lot of issues that may sort of create problems and barriers, and you need money to address them, to have, for example, extension workers that travel to certain areas or accommodate women needs. So basically, it's important that you also budget. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. A lot of programs or projects have proven that they can be implemented. They can have a gender component, integration of gender without a lot of money. It's the mindset and the commitment that matters also, but also money is important. And then monitoring and evaluation is very important, that you have to have specific indicators to measure what are we doing, basically. What are we doing, what we have committed to be doing in terms of gender equality, and using sex disaggregated data to track progress and to see who is actually benefiting in the end, how many women are benefiting. And we're not talking just about participation. Participation is one aspect, and it's one, but we're talking about actually benefiting from the outcomes, how many women have received land titles, if we're talking about a project related to land management, or how many women have been able to get loans from using that land title. So we're talking about this kind of benefits, how much productivity increased because of women, how much savings women made because of these training programs that they received. Yes.
Estela, you have like 1 minute more or a couple of minutes more.
Okay, I'll try to go briefly in the next slides. So this is some different examples of what we can be doing. We can be doing with gender mainstreaming at the different levels. Here it's the national level, and this is practically based on CEDAW general recommendation that I mentioned earlier. So basically, using these tools, the gender mainstreaming tools, you can support reforming legal and policy frameworks. You can ensure gender responsive services in agriculture and restoration, and equitable access to services and resources. Very importantly, you can use these tools to remove certain barriers for women that I mentioned that face different forms of discrimination, but besides being women. And as always, it's important that we can always need to have sex disaggregated data, gender indicators, using this kind of frameworks that can help us in this work. Next slide, please. And then there are at the regional level also, when there are in terms of shared jurisdiction, shared ecosystems that that go beyond the borders of a community. It's important that they are aligned with national policies. There are opportunities to create data collection, cross-regional data collection, learning, cross-regional learning hubs and exchange of experience, and so on. And then where is it more important? Next slide, please. At the community level, what we can be doing with gender mainstreaming, there it's when it's really, the impact should be felt, basically. So these are important at the national and regional level for ensuring accountability and having the backup of institutions and governance, but then the real impact is at the community level through active participation of women in projects and in governance of the projects. Using the quotas has been very, very successful in different levels, particularly in politics. As you all know, the use of it, even though it has been discussed as a kind of forced way, but you have to force it some way to achieve results. And it has proven quite, more and more women are now involved in politics because of, thanks to gender, legally imposed gender quotas. It's very important to address customary and informal practices, and for this, sometimes we need to work with traditional and religious leaders to eliminate, even though, so the idea is not to go against them, but to involve them and to create alliances, then, and to try to influence the norms that sort of create the barriers and are the source of inequality. So there are requires working in different levels. It's not just one way of doing things when we talk about gender equality. And in the next slide, please, you have the opportunity to see how FOLUR teams and partners, could be important connectors linking the national and regional commitments to community level if they think strategically and if they are able to use all the resources and that are out there. And it's very important that any project at the community level is co-designed with the community and starting with women, but also other members of the community, extension workers, social service providers, who also have to be trained on gender equality. So training is always, even though people sometimes feel exhausted by training, but it is important, especially when you work at these levels, and they have to be quite friendly and adapted to the context and to the people who work in the field, to their level of literacy and understanding. So everything has to be tailored to the local needs. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the end of our of my presentation. I'm sorry for taking a bit longer. I just wanted to conclude with this question that maybe you can address later, because I want our colleague Patricia to follow up with some very exciting examples from FOLUR country projects. But what are some opportunities in the context that you work to advance gender equality? Just think about it. If you want to share your thoughts, please feel free to do it in the chat box or later when Patty finishes her presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Stella. And we, I mean, there was a lot of interaction in the chat box. We have many different comments, and we will have time after your presentation, Patty, to invite participants to share their experience. So if we are ready, Alexandra, I think if you can share your screen, Patty, you can start with your presentation.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Stella, for that. We're going to build a little bit more on Stella's presentation. And so I hope you guys can stick around a little longer with us, because we want to talk about specific examples of the kinds of gender responsive project actions, activities, approaches that you are starting to take, you are thinking about taking in the future. And I'm going to give a few examples from what I've already learned from the FOLUR project teams. And I'd like you to correct me if I'm mistaken, add on other things you're doing, because we're building up the story of what this incredible 27 country project program is showing the world about being able to, yes, we can tackle and improve women's and men's empowerment and gender equality in our food systems, land use, restoration projects. I mean, after all, these are not gender projects. And there was a lot of skepticism at the beginning about, you know, why should we be doing this? But I think we're at the point now that we are learning what can be done. So this is a very exciting time for us. So next slide, please. When we started out a couple of years ago, I went to artificial intelligence and I asked this question. And this, of course, the Chat GPT is a review of the literature. So this is what was out there in the literature, what we know about how can we restore landscapes and at the same time empower women. That's the question I started with. And I thought it was very interesting because on the left-hand side in blue, these are the areas, if you were, the work areas that it came up with as a summary of the literature. There's opportunities in ecotourism, in sustainable ag and land management practices, and climate smart agriculture, as we've been calling it. There's opportunities through agroforestry actions, through water conservation, reforestation showed up, renewable energy efforts, and wetland restoration. All of these areas actually fall in some and many FOLUR country projects. They're not all covering all areas. But it's interesting, not just the what question in the blue, but the how. How do we do this in a way to empower women, for example? And this came up with, I thought, an interesting list of things being suggested. Blended finance approaches within projects, public-private finance coming in from different ways, female-targeted financial products, and several FOLUR projects are looking at this, working with banks to educate them on how they can meet the needs of women farmers, for example. Now we know technical trainings and specifically targeting and hiring women, for example, in extension services is a very powerful thing that some of our FOLUR projects are doing. Gender budgeting is key, as Stella mentioned. Crowdsourcing popped up as an interesting one, where you can go out and you can ask, thousands of farmers what their needs are, say for a particular variety, sort of what they're looking for in a crop variety. You can now do it in a much broader way than we used to be able to do. And mobile banking also has offered some real new opportunities. So this is just, again, getting you thinking of the kinds of things that project teams can think about. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about 5 main types of gender responsive actions that we can be thinking. And the first and most obvious one that almost all projects are doing, and I'm very happy to say you all are doing this well, is you're thinking about very inclusive, participatory engagement processes. Bringing people together, bringing people to the table that have not traditionally been there. The other thing many of you are doing is thinking about strategic gender partners. So working with women's groups that are already existing in your communities, for example, I think is a very strategic gender partner to think about. And there are often other groups that can be brought in. For example, in FOLUR Ghana, the CREMAs, the Community Resource Management areas, they've been using very well-developed participatory tools to bring youth into the conversation, women, making sure that they are involved in developing integrated management plans for their landscapes. I know Indonesia and others, Tanzania, Liberia is doing this. Some teams are doing participatory landscape mapping exercises. This is a very useful thing to do at the community level. So I think this is something that is being done and can be done even better. And for future projects, they can learn from us what worked well. Next slide, please. The second area of gender responsive actions, I call innovative communication efforts. Okay, really thinking about how do you reach the people that have not necessarily been involved, have been marginalized. Thinking about how to use mobile phones. I know in Ghana and other places, they're creating WhatsApp groups. And WhatsApp groups are going from the community level all the way up to the national level. And that's linking those levels and empowering women and others along the way. But also just thinking about where information is shared and how, more use of videos, highlighting women in the restoration activities or the climate smart ag activities, showing what they are doing, making them more visible, for example. In Uganda FOLUR project, for example, I know that, or I heard they're planning to support radio programs targeting women and highlighting these climate smart ag practices and their rights, talking about women's land rights. So I'd love to hear more. I saw that Marion and others from the Uganda team are online. So please share some of your experiences with us in the chat box if you can. Okay, next slide. The third area is capacity strengthening. Now, all our projects are doing some kinds of trainings. So again, it's how do you get thoughtful about these technical trainings that empower not just women, but men, youths, other groups that have been excluded. Leadership training turns out to be very critical in terms of empowering. FOLUR Mexico is doing some thoughtful things about their trainings and including childcare, so the women are much more able to come to these technical trainings. So that, again, we would like to hear more examples of specifically what are you doing, because we can all talk about trainings and number of women trained, but what we are trying to get to is measuring why does that matter? What are these trained people doing differently that's empowering, changing their lives? So the outcomes, and we'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. The fourth area is thinking about initiatives aimed at enhancing women's access to finance and entrepreneurial skills. So thinking about how to support women-led enterprises, such as tree nurseries, that's going on in several countries. Again, in Mexico, they're looking at women-led coffee branding. So the women-led companies are producing coffee that's branded as women's brand, which is really innovative way that with a certification that ups the value of what they're doing. And as I mentioned, the thinking about working with financial partners, banks and others, to get them working harder to meet the needs of women in the projects, women entrepreneurs, for example. There's several FOLUR country projects that are doing this. And then the next slide, please. The fifth area, as mentioned by Stella, is the monitoring and evaluation. Now, you're all doing this, but are you going to be able to talk about some of the sex disaggregated indicators of how you have, again, reached some outcomes? And if you're not tracking it, it's very hard to tell that story. And there's help out there, there's tools out there. We can help you if you are struggling with this. What are your indicators that you need, that you're still missing? So reach out to us and ask for help on this. Next slide, please. So I want to just end up with one example of a way of getting to this. How can we actually measure and value how we are empowering women in our project? And you are all doing it in some way, shape, or form. But there are methods available out there that will allow you to measure this. We know that empowerment outcomes are related to income and assets, to leadership, to knowledge and education, to time savings is a big one. When you can save time, women don't have to go out and spend hours gathering fuel, water, etc. That is empowering. And there's health outcomes and food security related outcomes. And there are tools out there such as the WEA, it's called, the Women's Empowerment in Ag Index. Many organizations are using this now. And there's also one that's particularly good for FOLUR projects, I think, and it's called the Women's Plus Standard. It's a women's empowerment standards that project teams can use to actually measure, value, and direct financial resources back to women. And I'm happy to talk more to teams specifically about the W+ if you're interested. Next slide, please. So the W+ was applied in the case of Brazil to an agroforestry project, a women's group. CSO is doing some really good work on agroforestry targeting women and youths in Brazil. And they used the W+ standard to measure and monitor the improvements in women's lives. And they were able to generate credits, women's empowerment credit, and they are selling them to a private sector company that wants to show the wonderful things they are doing to empower women. Next slide, please. Basically, this approach lets you think about, first of all, how are you reaching these women? How are you benefiting them? And then how are you empowering them? And I think always having this in the back of your mind, reach, benefit, empower, is a very useful framework for all of us. Can you get to that empowerment point where the training has mattered? They are now in leadership positions. They are now getting more finance, so they are generating more income, for example. And so we've got some examples. We have another example in Mexico. Next slide, please. So what I've been trying to do with the Gendered Working Group is pull together stories highlighting these efforts, your successes. So please take a note, go to this site, folur.org/knowledge, and look at our practical notes. And in the bottom left, this learning from success is our new one. And we're going to continue to tell your success stories. And this is one on using the W+ in Mexico that I think you'll be very interested in reading. And again, I'm happy to share more information. And then next slide, which leaves us to come back to you. And I would like to ask you two questions as we go forward and open it up for discussion with all of you. What gender responsive strategies, approaches, activities is your project team using now or would like to use? And secondly, what gender-related outcomes do you think you will be able to measure or you would like to measure? So I'd really like to hear back from you on these two not easy questions, I'll have to say. So I'll leave it there and open it up, and then maybe Sandra and Stella, you can jump in and we can help sort of moderate this together. Please feel free to put your hand up or type in a question, a thought you have on these questions I'm leaving you with. Are we seeing any hands?
And thank you, Patty. Please, whoever wants to share their experience, introduce yourself, and feel free to share with us. I saw a lot of interaction on the chat box.
Yes, there
and I saw Marion. Sorry, I put you on the spot. From Uganda. Was sharing also Heribola, another colleague. So maybe Sarah, if you would like to share with us, or in the chat box too. We have like a few minutes more. If you have any questions.
Yeah, Marianne, I saw that you had a group of you from the Uganda FOLUR project. Can you just tell us what you're excited about? What's, what you see as some of the good opportunities? I know your project is just starting up, but I know you've also been very thoughtful about coming up with a gender action plan. And do we still have Marianne on? Maybe she's.
I think I don't see her anymore. Yeah, I don't see her. And
I lost them.
And also I see Misa, you're joining us from Tanzania.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet
Hi.
you. Patricia, it's a long
Hi,
time.
Lisa. Yes, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much. For us in Tanzania, we have two landscape. I'm from Zanzibar landscape, but what we are doing now, even though we already start like in other country in Africa, we are just starting it. But what we are just including all the genders, especially women. Women are the one who are just been doing the farming activities. But I think we are just in the rich issues just go to the benefit on that particular issue, because we are just involved with both women nowadays, because most of them, they are farmers, and what we include commodities, more rice and others, agroforest practice, but we are also want to include all of them, even though we are just in the scratch, but our aim is just to go there and have to educate all those women, the youth, the regions that also be benefited to them also. So that is our aim, also to include all of these yes, here in Tanzania, actually, and in Zanzibar particularly, yes. But also we are just being involved in this financial, like bankers, so just to be involved with those farmers so that they can just have the small loans, something like that, the FOLUR, they can just be benefit from that. So, but we also want to work with them with not in the individual perspective, but with the groups or women to be there so that they can just be benefit on that particular aspect. Yeah. But we want to include women empowerment, yes, here in Zanzibar, actually.
Well, it sounds to me like you are thinking about the benefit. If you're working with banks and getting them involved with banks, that's definitely right.
Them. Also to come to the impact of the pillars over there. Just we are starting from the scratch, but there are others. We're just strengthening this FOLUR, but there are other projects that can be just becoming. We are coming together so that we can just include all of this to empower women in that particular aspect. Yeah. But this is very important. Yeah. Yeah.
And Lisa, can I ask, are you also working with extension and women extension service officers or whatever you call them?
Yeah. Yes, we are working with the extension officers also, yes. Because they're the one who are just going to reach those farmers and because mainly the FOLUR here in Tanzania, we're working with communities over there. So we're just going to reach them. And they are women are they are the most farmers compared to men. When they're just coming at the end of those profits, that particular area. So we have the extension workers also we're working, even though the project they're going to also to hire those extension workers, but also we are using the existing one from the ministry that we're working together with them in those in the district areas or those in the region of the projects that have been taking place. Yeah, so we're working with them.
And if I may intervene, have you thought of strategies on how you're going to reach these women? Strategies, and especially, for example, maybe something you probably have thought, but just a reminder for the others as well, that one strategy is to have also to have sort of gender quotas for extension workers. So you have women as extension workers because some women may feel more comfortable working with women extension workers. This could be a challenge, but this is a good strategy.
Exactly, yes, and that's what the strategy. So there are other women extension workers who are working with, and sometimes it was just now it's globalization a bit. It was that before you can't work with women, men just can't work with women. But nowadays, at least, but we also have this. We empower those extension officers who are women who are working with women also. Yeah, with their times and everything. At least we're changing those strategies. Yes, we're doing better. Yeah.
And maybe something based on what we discussed, maybe this analysis, the gender analysis doesn't have to be some big fancy document. It could be just a thought, thinking like, what are the barriers that you may encounter in reaching out to these women? Do you expect them to participate fully in trainings with extension workers, for example, or you think that they might not be willing to join for different reasons, either family obligations or men not allowing them or them not finding it interesting? So this is a good way to think of why they may not be joining, sort of to take measures to address this.
Yes, Agustela, nowadays it's different. We are just, the world is changing nowadays.
Yes.
That was before, but now we can just, because they have, we understand women, especially the villages, they have many responsibilities, but we can just buy time, and sometimes we are just requested to those leaders of the villages to have some numbers for women also to be included in that particular areas. Or maybe sometimes we are just going there to themselves, to the village, or maybe to the farm, they are there. So we are just having at least 20 minutes to, we're not taking much of their time, but we sometimes we are just agree with them. We're just talking to them. We comfort them what time, better time for them. Sometimes they have obligation, but they just come maybe to the Shehia leaders, or maybe we're just going to the field. This is most of the time we just go to the field. But before it was a bit difficult, but nowadays at least we can manage sometimes. Yeah, with women. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's inspiring, Misa. Thank you for sharing that. I see that Titilope is put her hand up. If you can share, you put it in this. You put it in the chat too. Thank you so much. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Hello. I think it's Marian. Or is Titilope or Marian?
Yes, this is Marian from Uganda.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Marian.
Yes, recently we had a training on restoration methods, and one of the activities, one of the ways we are trying to get men and women work together is to bring on the men to take a forefront action, because while we're doing the training, we're also profiling the farmers to know the socioeconomic conditions of their households at the start of the interventions. And then also along the way, we have identified key model farmers per sub-county where we are making interventions in. Among those model farmers, we are taking their profiles, what is the socioeconomic condition, what is the household population status, the numbers at household level, how are they able to meet their needs at households, what are their outcomes in terms of the products when they produce. Currently, as we are starting to intervene, what is the situation on ground? We expect to continue with those model farmers through the 2-3 years. And after the 3 years, we want to see the changes that will be taking place at household level. One of the issues that we are emphasizing is currently with the cultural, sociocultural factors, the gender norms at household level, what is happening at households is that women actually do not access any resources. They don't touch the funds. They are involved in the coffee value chain from planting, weeding, harvesting. But when it comes to sell, the men are the ones who are taking charge. So we're saying we need to intervene at that level. Okay, if the men have to take responsibility for the coffee and other high value crops, what can they do in such a way that they can also be able to empower the women to have some money at the households? Because we realize that in the Mount Elgon region, where we are intervening, there's actually a high dropout rate of the girls. And the reason for that is that the girls and even boy children, they run to the mother, oh, mommy, books are over. Oh, mommy, I want pads. Mommy, I want this, I want that, I want uniform. But you realize that the social cultural factors don't allow women. The men actually don't allow the women to hold cash. So we're engaging the men, we're educating them on the value of shared resources. If they are holding the resources for coffee, what other resources can they put to the women to hold? And we're intervening in such that the women, we can grow the fruit trees around the coffee farm. That is agroforestry. We can also introduce the backyard gardens where the women can grow vegetables so that part of those vegetables can be sold for incomes to the women. We are encouraging households, when they sell the coffee, they should buy a cow, because the cows are going to help them with the manure for the coffee and the banana, because the farming system is a coffee banana system. So from the cow, they can manure the coffee and banana, but from the cow, the women should control the milk, because some of it can be taken for household nutrition. But if a cow can produce for a household 5 liters in the morning and another 5 liters in the evening, part of that milk can be sold so that women can have some money that they can buy the uniforms, the pads, for the girls. So we're engaging the men, male engagement, to make sure that resources are shared within the household, because we realize that when the women all the time ask the men, today no salt, today no sugar, today no school fees, today no uniform, so it brings violence. Men get irritated. All the time you're asking for money, all the time you're asking for this and that. So we're saying, let's get alternatives that can have some monies to the women so that they can be able to meet the smaller household needs. So that is the male engagement that we are doing as Uganda Country Project. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is very interesting. Okay, so now we go to Titalope in Nigeria. Is it?
All right,
Yeah,
thank
and
you
we
very much.
Good.
have a couple of minutes more, and then we should wrap up. Please go ahead, Dr. Titi.
All right, I think some of the major things we are doing have actually have highlighted them in the chat box. So like I had earlier submitted for the ILM, We now have more women to take part in the decision process for the integrated land management plan that we are trying to do at the local level. So we are ensuring that we have more women participating at that level so that they can, it's called joint visioning. Everybody can sit together and say, okay, this is the way we want our community to look in the next so time, the landscape, this is what we want. And women are also part of that decision. So for the innovative communication efforts, we are already developing videos for our farmer field business schools. We have short videos. We want to adapt them to the local languages that people can easily relate with and understand. The same thing for the manuals also that we have. We want to put them in pictorial, more of pictures that people can easily see and also be able to relate with. That also is part of the plan that we have ongoing. We're already doing it. And of course, we are already studying some of the policies that I think are not gender balanced at the local levels, at the state level. So we are trying to see how we can transform and bring out the gaps that are in them and then suggest to the state government for them to be able to accommodate them. And this, we believe, will help us to, like, in a way, I think the gender equality line. Then for capacity strengthening, of course, we organize training from time to time, and we have one that is coming up in leadership training where we want to be able to equip the capacity of the women in terms of their soft skill and some technical skill for them to be able to take part in decision making at the local level and also at the project delivery level as well. So when they have the capacity, they can also contribute and understand what we are talking about. So that's it's also one of the avenues that we are using to, one of the strategies that we are employing. And of course, this last 2 weeks, we've been engaging a lot of financial institutions to see the loan facility, financial facilities that are available for all and also for women. And we have seen some of them, quite a number of them. So the next level is for us to be able to bring all these financial institutions together to harvest the opportunities that they have so that we can make a compendium of them and see the requirement for them and what you can get if you have this. So that also is some of the plans that we have on ground for now. And of course, the customary land titling that we want to support at the local government level, we already have a stipulated 30% that is to be dedicated to, that will be dedicated mainly to women, then others can be men. So for the land titles, we are considering women also being part of that process as well. So they too are going to be beneficiaries. So I will stop here for now. Let me just add that because of the fact that most times some of these areas are remote, we are considering getting local community facilities so that are residents in those areas. And it will help them, particularly when it comes to timing, because some of them, if you go to them on their market days, they won't come out and meet you, they will go to the market. But when this person is resident, even if it is later in the night when they come back, that they have agreed to meet, they can always do their meeting and come out with some of their action plan, and then we'll be able to deliver some of the things that we have for them. Because for now, there are times that you have to travel and you get there, they tell you their market there, something has happened, they ask them not to come out, things like that. So those people that are residents in those communities, we are maybe in the next 1 month or thereabout, they're going to be part of the, 50% of them are going to be men, 50% women, so that is equally spread. Men can have access to men, women can have access to women. And of course, the barrier of women not talking to men are not so much in some of the landscape where we operate for now. But even if they are there, we are thinking about balancing our community facilitators. People that are part of them, they know that, yes, we have their interest at that. So that's what we are for now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, Sandra, I guess we're running out of time, huh?
Yeah, but it was so exciting to see and thank you, Dr. Titilope, always for sharing your experience, and Mari and other colleagues. Yeah, I think we need to wrap up, and thank you very much for the participation and the chat box. Thank you to Stella and Patty. I know that you would like to continue the conversation, but I think that we will have time we will invite you to share with us your experience. Please do it. We can share your experience in other trainings and in the gender equality community. here you can, if you are not member yet, you can join us. And if you have any problem joining the community, we will assist you. And thank you to my colleagues, Philippe and Alexandra, for being always in the backup and supporting in the design of these events and all the FACS community events. And to Claudia and Fernanda, the interpreters. I encourage you to participate in and complete the post-session feedback survey that it's going to be shared also by Philippe. And yes, you have our emails, our contact, and I think Patty and Estela, yeah, we will be contacting our FOLUR colleagues to continue the conversation and regional dialogues and clinics. So thank you, everybody.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Sandra. That was wonderful.